At 41, Thomas Miller thought he had it all figured out. A college degree, 20 years of solid experience, and a respectable title. He had a steady paycheck and a routine so ingrained he could do it in his sleep. Every single morning, Thomas clipped his employee badge to his belt, drove the same stretch of highway, parked in the very same spot, and walked into the same glass tower in downtown Chicago. That badge was his key. It opened doors automatically. It always had. Until one morning, it didn't. The scanner beeped red. He tried again. Red. A security guard walked over, his voice polite but firm. "Sir, you'll need to check in with HR." That was the moment. That's when Thomas knew something was wrong. 30 minutes later, he was sitting in a quiet, soulless room with beige walls, across from a woman he barely recognized from human resources. She spoke in a calm, practiced voice about restructuring, shifting market changes, and difficult but necessary decisions. Thomas didn't hear the corporate jargon. All he could hear was one sentence pounding in his head, over and over: "I don't belong here anymore." By noon, it was all over. His badge was deactivated, his company laptop wiped clean, and his entire 20-year career was unceremoniously emptied into a single cardboard box. 20 years of his life, reduced to a box. The drive home felt completely unreal. The familiar city skyline looked the same, but Thomas felt invisible, like a ghost haunting his own life. He just sat in his car in the driveway for what felt like an eternity before finally summoning the strength to go inside. His wife knew immediately. "You're home early," she said, her voice gentle. Thomas just nodded. "I got laid off." She didn't say anything else. She just hugged him, hard, and in that moment, that hug was the only thing that kept him from completely breaking down. The first week felt like a strange, unwelcome vacation. Thomas dusted off his resume, updated it with his latest achievements, and started applying for jobs. He told himself, and everyone else, that everything would be fine. After all, he was experienced, he was valuable. He wasn't replaceable, was he? But the weeks started to drag into months. The initial trickle of responses slowed to a complete halt. His carefully crafted emails disappeared into a digital void. The few interviews he landed ended with polite smiles and empty promises. Then came the rejections, cold and impersonal, arriving without any real explanation. And right behind them, doubt started to creep in. By the 4th month, the doubt had turned into a monster. Thomas began waking up in the middle of the night, his chest tight with anxiety. His entire identity, the provider, the professional, the dependable family man, felt like it was cracking apart. He started avoiding his friends. He made excuses to skip family gatherings. He absolutely hated the inevitable question that everyone asked with well-meaning smiles. "So, what are you doing now?" He wanted to scream, "I'm trying not to feel completely useless." But instead, he just forced a smile and mumbled something vague. Late at night, Thomas would sit alone at the kitchen table, staring at his old performance reviews and the awards that once lined his office shelf. They were supposed to be proof that he mattered, proof that his loyalty meant something. But now, they just felt like artifacts from another life. And the realization that his loyalty hadn't protected him, that it meant nothing in the end, hurt far more than the layoff itself. One evening, after another rejection email landed in his inbox, something inside Thomas finally snapped. He pushed the stack of papers away, the sound echoing in the silent house. He said out loud to no one, "If this company doesn't want me, then who am I without it?" The question was terrifying. It hung in the air, heavy and unanswered, but it also sparked something. It was the first honest question he'd asked himself in months, and it changed everything. Thomas realized a profound and unsettling truth. He had built his entire identity on a plastic badge, not on himself. That badge had opened doors for him? Yes. But in doing so, it had also quietly closed the door on his own imagination, his own potential. The very next day, Thomas did something that felt deeply uncomfortable and counterintuitive. He stopped hunting for jobs. Not forever, But he pressed pause. Instead, he took a personal inventory. He asked himself, what skills do I actually have, separate from my old job title? What problems am I genuinely good at solving? When people came to him for help, what did they ask for, outside of his official role? He realized he had spent decades managing complex systems, streamlining inefficient processes, mentoring younger employees, and solving high-pressure problems on tight deadlines. Those skills didn't belong to some corporation. They belonged to him. They were his. So Thomas started learning again, not as an employee preparing for his next review, but as a man rebuilding himself from the ground up. He read books about consulting, freelancing, and the new world of independent work. He listened to podcasts on long walks, absorbing new ideas and perspectives. He bought a simple notebook and started writing down his thoughts, not rigid business plans, just fragments of ideas, questions, and possibilities. The progress was slow, and the fear was a constant, loud companion. The financial pressure was growing heavier by the day. But for the first time in a long time, something new began to emerge, a sense of ownership. Thomas started reaching out to his old colleagues and contacts. But this time, he wasn't asking for a job, he was asking for conversations. He'd ask, what are the biggest challenges you're facing right now in your department? He would listen, and then he'd offer his advice, freely. Most just listened politely, but one of them asked for help. That conversation turned into a short-term consulting project. After he successfully completed it, another one followed. The income was inconsistent, and the future felt uncertain, but Thomas felt alive again. For the first time in his professional life, he wasn't waiting for someone else to give him permission. He was creating value directly, on his own terms. By the time Thomas turned 43, he was earning less money than he had in his corporate job, but he was learning and growing more than he had in the last decade. He was working harder than he had in years, not because a boss told him to, but because he chose to. Because the work was his. Then, something completely unexpected happened. A former executive from another company reached out. Hey, he said, I hear you're doing some independent consulting now. We could really use someone with your skills. Thomas paused. But this time, he didn't pause out of desperation or fear. He paused because, for the first time, he had leverage. He had options. He had a choice. Today, Thomas Miller doesn't wear a badge to work. He keeps his old one in a drawer. He doesn't keep it as a bitter reminder of his loss, but as a proud symbol of his growth. Because losing his job didn't destroy him, it freed him. It taught him that loyalty is honorable, but blind loyalty is a dangerous trap. It taught him that your skills matter infinitely more than your title. And most importantly, it taught him that reinvention isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of maturity. And this is a truth that so many of us need to hear right now. Your career is not your identity. A plastic badge is not a measure of your worth. And having to start over, whether you're in your 40s or at any other age, is not a setback, it's a second chapter. And this time, you get to write it with wisdom instead of fear. Thanks for watching. It's a second chapter. And this time, you get to write it with wisdom instead of fear. Thanks for watching.